Morning, guys. I think we can probably get started. It was actually quite interesting, and it's nice to see all of you this morning, and thank you for taking the time to come. But John actually made a very, very good comment now as we were chatting. It is, just looking at the amount of people in the room, it actually speaks to that we're not paying enough attention to security, right? Which is quite a good observation. So, I mean, most of you guys know me. I'm Coenie Vermaak. I'm from a company called Bright House Automotive, and we're part of the Dimension Data group. So as we're sitting here, and before I get into the slides, as I talk through this, I want you to wear a couple of hats as we go through, right? So think of your role in your business, be it technical or be it on the business side, what your role is in the whole hierarchy to ensure security is implemented and that everyone does their bit to take care of ensuring you don't become victim to security threats, right? But also think about it in your personal capacity. All the apps we've got on our phones, every website you visit, all the emails you get, and whether you actually apply the same sort of reasoning and protection and layered security / barriers around all of that as you would do in the workplace. There's a frightening thing that I've noticed as we talk to people, right? You sit in a meeting and we go through all the right stuff. We're securing, physically securing our server rooms. We've got all the software in place. Our firewalls are up to scratch and everything. And you take a look at the guy, go outside, have a smoke with him, open an email and literally just like, oh, this looks good. First link, right? So it's almost like it doesn't translate. So I want you to think of all of that context as we get into this. So what are the problems? So in my opinion, some of the biggest things or reasons for us not paying enough attention is really just general awareness, right? I don't think, and when I say that, I'm probably not the people in the room, I was preaching to the quiet a little bit here, but generally just the awareness of how pervasive this threat really is. And the comprehension of the scale of the damage that can happen, as well as some really major misconceptions, right? And I speak to that a little bit later in the presentation as well. But this is not 20 years ago where it's some guy in a basement that's trying to get something from you, trying to prove a point. This is really big organizations that drive cybercrime and make a lucrative business out of this. And then also there's complacency, and I think that's probably the biggest reason we see companies and ourselves get into trouble quite easily, is we would go through the exercise, we'll put some stuff in place, we did a nice disaster recovery plan, and that's all great. We park it, we tick the box, and we never review it again. Obviously the threat landscape changes literally, well, probably hourly, never mind daily. And we constantly need to go review what it is we did and if it's still fit for purpose, right? New network devices been added, firewall rules never updated, and people just forget these things. And then you actually just create vulnerabilities yourself. So some of the common misconceptions, like I said, it's a lot of people, if you speak to, and I'm talking, hat outside of business at the moment, right? General public. If you talk about cybercrime and hackers and stuff, they still think it's someone that's living in a basement somewhere eating some pizza, untrained, isolated, and they understand Linux a little bit, maybe saw VI, and that's where we're at. Where in reality, that is definitely not the case, right? The second thing that I hear quite often that actually frightens me is the conception of people, and especially from developers, and I'm talking technical people actually that fall into this trap, is, well, it must be secure because it's behind the firewall, right? It's configured, we've got the technical team, they're looking at this. That is definitely not the case, right? Security is really a layered approach of things we put down. Very generally, they filter on IP addresses and port information, so there's no broader context, there's no consideration for payload. And like I said now, the rules can become outdated, which really puts you in a bad space. And also the fact that cybersecurity is solely the responsibility of IT departments. Now, if you adopt that kind of approach, yeah, you're going to get a level of security, but I promise you, somewhere there's going to be a gap that no one's going to see where you're going to get the threat coming through, right? So in my mind, developers really need to get closer to DevSecOps people and security specialists to understand the implication of the code they're writing and the impact on that. I know at these events, and more, I think that'll change a little bit, but there's a very big focus on we need the fastest, best scaling, highest performing application. And it's great, we do need that, right? The one thing that worries me a little bit that we're not paying attention to is it also needs to be secure. The other thing that somewhat surprises me, and I'm going to make a prediction for the future on this one, is with the whole generative AI vibe that's out there now. At least we're getting to the point where we're using it responsibly now, which is good. And I think in the next iteration of this, the marketing guys will probably slap us securely and responsibly to it. And I really hope they do. Because if you just blindly follow, there's some interesting things that can creep into your code. Okay, then the other thing to understand is everyone interacts with systems and devices and data daily, right? And there's actually an example of a real cyber attack that happened in our country earlier in the year that I'm going to talk to later, which really speaks to this point. But every interaction point, whether it's your developer, whether it's getting through QA, whether it is your business analyst, your executives, at every point when people interact with the data, there's a potential that the data could be exfiltrated by someone. And as I stand here, and we're going to focus on the technical stuff because this is a technical conference, right? But very rarely is the technical aspect of it the big portion of the risk that you face. People will always remain the biggest risk. And the syndicates and the attackers also know that, and it's way easier to, through social engineering and phishing and stuff, get information from an individual and to get them to do something they shouldn't than it actually is to get through all your layers of defense. Now, that is also the most difficult problem to address, right? Because there's many forms of training that people can do and constant reminders and all those kind of things, but we also live in a world that's just getting more and more busy every day. People are under pressure, they're strained. Probably don't take that extra 5 minutes just to think through what it is they do, and you only need to do it once, right? Once you've clicked that link or inserted that USB drive, well, that's the end of it, right? Okay, so then, in my opinion, the misunderstanding of the modern cyber adversaries leads to complacency in security measures, right? And that really, if that's one thing that I can leave you guys with, it is probably that little, or that block or that statement, is never become complacent about security. No one, even the greatest experts, know everything, right? It's a constant drive where we need to feed off ourselves, look at the attacks that's out there that happened and learn lessons from other people. You don't want to, in your post-mortem, learn the lessons from your own system because you're going to have your hands full enough to try and get your systems up. So then, cybercrime these days is really, it's a professional organized crime. Hackers and organized crime groups are becoming increasingly sophisticated. They have incentives and bonus structures like major corporations, right? And they probably have budgets that rival most major global corporations. The thing that worries me quite a bit, and in the example you'll see that as well, why, is the collaboration and specialization that's coming into the modus operandi. And now some seemingly unconnected events actually get used by the guys, and they do the whole big data thing, right? So they enrich with data from this breach and data from that breach, and before you know it, they actually built up a data set or a landscape to attack on that is just unknown before, right? Just some statistics. So there was a 72% increase in data breaches in 2023 compared to 2022. I'd really be interested to see what that number is for 2024. Unfortunately, at the time of writing this, I couldn't find anything. But it's a frightening statistic, right? So then in 2023, globally, almost 73% of all organizations was impacted by ransomware attacks. Also a really frightening statistic that I could pick up. If you're talking over 300 million organizations through the world, that's a lot of downtime, a lot of money that was lost, and man hours for people to try and get this up and running. The positive of that, though, that means there's also quite a nice sample set of information for the rest of us to learn from the mistakes they made, where, again, we shouldn't be ignorant and arrogant to think that it can't happen to us. keep your eyes on it and actually learn from the mistakes they made. Because generally, it is not the big stuff that go wrong, right? It's that small little loophole that no one thinks that gets everyone in. So it is estimated that $10.5 trillion worldwide would be associated with cybercrime this year. And the global average cost of a data breach in 2023 was about $4.4 million. Now, in my mind, and probably because from South Africa, our rand is not really all that great, but if that kind of money hits one of our companies, and that's what you need to pay, you're going to get very close to closing your doors, right? And on top of that, you have fines that's sitting with the GDPRs or APAPIA or whatever, that also add immense pain to this, right? So it is really a very serious thing from a company perspective to ensure we do the right things. And again, moving back and just putting the other hat on, we're talking as individuals now. If you end up at a place, you're not going to see losses like that, all right? But you could see a loss in your identity or different frauds on your accounts. And the amount of effort to unbundle all of those problems is also well worth just securing it in the first place. So what is the significance of cybersecurity in our daily lives? So obviously, we want to be safeguarding sensitive data from unauthorized access. We want to protect privacy to preserve our identities, like I alluded to now. We want to prevent financial loss. And we want to ensure business continuity and just continuity in general, right? And with that, I again mean in our personal capacities. You don't want to be impacted with one of these things because all of a sudden, you can't get on your flight or you can't actually get to your office. Most of the times, I don't even carry a wallet around with me anymore because everything is just on the phones, right? I really realize it's in my best interest, if I need to protect one thing, I need to protect my phone. If you lose that, you lose everything. So you want to ensure your continuity and at least have backups of everything, be able to recover and all those kind of things. We want to maintain normality, right? And this is also one of those things for me that the more we get into this and the more the speed of technology accelerates, this is becoming a bigger issue. Back in the day, and it feels like it's forever ago now, but you didn't have to worry about stuff like this. If you wanted to chat to someone, you could pick something up, you can send a message or whatever, you get something back, you can read it, and you could trust it. Whenever we interact with anything these days, it's almost like you have to be a detective at every move you make. You've got to interrogate everything you do. And I'm pretty sure once you actually become involved with one of this or become a victim of this, it actually becomes a hell of a lot worse. So it's really, in my mind, well worth looking out for the signs and protecting yourself that you don't fall into the trap that it actually starts disrupting your life. So some of the common daily threats that we could see, and generally there's good training for everyone out on that, is around malware, phishing attacks, spoofing, password attacks. Something I could talk about for hours, what people consider to be good passwords and good practices for passwords, be that as it may. Okay, so what are some of the financial implications, right? So we already said that cybercrime and the syndicates have got lucrative businesses within an ever-expanding market. There's opportunities for the basement hacker and the government-sponsored syndicates. You can literally buy a hack online these days, and if you get on the dark web, it's been rumored that you can do a hack as a service type thing, and that's really scary thoughts, right? So the only way in my mind, and it's a very idealistic way, and I know there's not a lot of people with the right what's the right word, appetite to do this, and even the practicality of doing this, but curbing the reward for cyber attacks and raising the risks for them could actually lead to a decrease. Now, in my naive mind, I hope we're going to see a trend where that actually starts happening one day. But just the nature of the global scale that these attacks and cyber crimes are done, it is really difficult to pin it down. Because as soon as you go cross-border, you deal with different legislations in different countries, and to bring all of that together is actually a breeding ground for crime to just expand, and a very difficult thing to curb, to bring down the cadence. But my hope and dream is that someday that'll happen and it'll start tapering off a little bit. So some implications for the businesses. You obviously suffer substantial direct financial losses due to cyber attacks. It takes a lot of man hours just to get everything back up and running, recovering your backups, seeing what was exfiltrated, going through the investigations. There's a big disruption to your business operations while this is happening. You deal with reputational damage, potential legal and regulatory cost. And then obviously after that, there's a knee-jerk where you actually now finally realize maybe we should be spending more on cybersecurity. And generally those tend to be, like I said, the knee-jerk, right? Now all the tools are great, the marketing pitch is good, so we put all of them in without understanding what it is and why we're doing it, right? Not to say you shouldn't be doing it and listening to them, but evaluate what it is, what you want to be protecting. It is not possible to protect everything, but protect the right stuff and at least have the right way to recover from them. So what are some human behaviors that contribute to security vulnerabilities? Negligence and error, right? I alluded to that a little bit earlier. When people are rushed and distractions and lack of awareness come into play. And before you know it, flash drive is just put into the machine. There you go, it's compromised. It's on the network. On an open Wi-Fi somewhere without realizing that something's going wrong, you go plug that back into the corporate network. Systems are infected. And the times where we're really pushing people to get stuff out and keep driving, this has become a bigger and bigger problem. Emotional responses, right? This is also one of the biggest issues to come around because there's no technical solution for this, right? We can do whatever we want. People will remain people. People are curious and people want to help other people. So the phone call comes in, sounds very innocent, very nice story, and before you know, if they appeal to the right emotion, you fell into the trap, right? Password hygiene. So how many of you guys that are here use proper password managers and rotate your passwords frequently? Okay, that's good. I quite like that. Even in our own company, as much as we drive this business, right, it's like, guys, use password managers. It's the right thing. We'll give you training. We'll show you what it is. You hop onto the next team call, someone starts sharing a screen. As people do, they share the wrong screen. Truest nuts, there's all the passwords, notepad, right out there. Phew, people, I cannot tell you enough. Those of you that don't, please look at how peaceful the guys that raise their hands can sleep at night. Very important to do. Then also denial, right? And again, this is more in a personal context than in a business context. But I think it can translate to happen there, but it cannot happen to me, right? I did all the trainings. I'm very careful on what I do. And I don't know the type of people that will send me emails that going to cause any harm. Very dangerous place to be. Always, and get that message across to your teams as well. Always just double check and be sure that it's really the right source that you're getting the stuff from and that it's trusted. Convenience, like I said, irresponsible use of public Wi-Fi networks. Overshare, and yeah, this is another one that I can go on for days, really, right? Is, just overshare on platforms like social media or having a chat to people and just sharing information. The type of people that engage in these kind of things to socially engineer this attack, right? They are experts at manipulating people and getting information in. So you may think it is really a very innocent chat you're having with someone, where are you going to this week? No, we're going to the conference, whatever it is. Okay, so now I know you're not home, right? I probably didn't find you by chance. I probably came looking for you to have the conversation with you. So I quite likely had a look at your profile on Facebook. Very innocent photo of yourself with your cat on your lap and your security system in the background, showing that, it's not on or not working or whatever. Simple examples. But if you start adding all these things up over time and build that trend across everything that's publicly available, and we put a lot of stuff out there in the open, the guys can build a really good profile to actually initiate an attack or just place you at a certain point in time and location so they can have better access to anything else. Very, very dangerous thing that I think we're not paying enough attention to in securing ourselves and our workplace and those kind of things. Social conformity, the social norms influencing how people behave. And this for me it's a difficult thing to solve. It's a little bit sad, but it's difficult, right? So if we talk about this a lot, generally with non-technical people, right? They tend to feel that we speak down on them because you're getting another security training. You're obviously not listening, so please come on, right? Then at the end of it, we go through any questions. And everyone's like, no, I know everything, right? And it's really, they just want to also feel part of, yeah, but I understood what everyone said. So I'm just going to run with it. I know what it is. And it's understanding that aspect when we deal with people and set up training for them and guide them through it, that people are just going to conform to the norm and go with the flow instead of asking the tough questions and ensuring that they're understanding. So maybe sometimes the way we generate the training materials or take people through it, we should almost aim it at your least likely to consume person and hopefully drive it through the rest. At least the one benefit out of the human traits that we can use to our benefit is the learning and adaptation ability, right? So people learn through experience. Hopefully, it's not a painful experience where you actually had a security incident and you can learn from someone else that went through that. But awareness will actually get us to a level where people start thinking about this and it becomes part of life. And unfortunately, for security-related stuff, it has to become part of life. Technology is moving in a direction. It's never going to get less. It's going to be more pervasive. I mean, our phones, the tablets, and all the connected devices are just going to get more and more as we go through life. And it's adapting and understanding the risks of the new IoT device that you bring into your house and you plug onto your network. That innocent POC you're doing for this great project and just sticking it on the corporate network. Being cognizant and learning to be cognizant of these things as we go along. Okay, so another thing that I had a quick chat to John about that I found interesting when I started doing this presentation. I actually scanned back through some of the previous year's presentations, see if there was a nice little gem or something I could use. And I stumbled onto the law of the accelerating returns for technology, right? And as I saw it, it actually occurred to me that the same that holds for technology and the drivers for your accelerating returns, they actually drive cybercrime as well. The more lucrative it is, the more guys are going to get on board, the quicker this whole thing is going to go. Flip side to it is, okay, cool. In response, all software vendors and hardware vendors are going to respond in kind, and they're also going to have accelerated return on what it is they do. But I think it's the way life just plays out, right? No good deed goes unpunished. For every major upgrade or patch that's fixed on something, there's probably 5 or 6 or however many people trying to undo that good in the first place. So it's quite interesting. I don't think it's going to go away, right? So as we stand, and from the stats we saw, cyber attacks is on the rise. There's some predictions that it's going to be more sophisticated AI-type hacking techniques that's going to come in the future. I don't see that as a major reality at this point in time, but I do understand and grant that it is something that could get sophisticated enough over time. I think the bigger threat, rather than AI doing the hacking for us, is just the availability of compute that's out there, the brute force that could be applied to all environments and trying to attack the environments. And also the attack surface is ever expanding. I mean, we're creating more applications, we're publishing more endpoints, more IoT devices are coming into our lives. It's just everything is becoming data and traffic somewhere that's vulnerable to attack on a server or being intercepted over the network or something like that. So what do we do to counter this, right? So generally, it's a good idea to move away from your traditional architectures towards a zero trust architecture. Greater threat intelligence sharing, focus on user training and awareness, and very importantly, focus on, have, and continuously test and work on incident response plans. It is nice, knowing that something could happen, having a thought of what we'll do if it happens. If I've got a backup, it's okay, we can get up and running. But depending on the level of chaos at that point in your life, what you thought could have been a good response plan, it could actually just come apart at the seams, which really sets you back quite a long way. So work on these things, test it through, work on scenarios, and do real-world simulations as often as you can. You cannot practice this enough. Okay, so here's the example that I kept alluding to, right? So In 2020, there was a data breach at a credit bureau, which everyone deemed to be really insignificant, right? So it's a couple of names, email addresses that was exfiltrated. Nice list, no one really paid much attention to it. Early 2024, there was a data breach on a messaging platform. Similar type thing, similar type data, also deemed pretty insignificant. And then the big one came, right? So further or later on in 2024, it was quite a significant breach at an insurance company where the data from the two previous breaches was taken, overlaid with each other, enriched with information, and then they could actually get to the point where they could pass the security verifications that the insurance company had in place with people's information. That ended up with leaking more data, so now they had access to ID numbers, residential addresses, cell phone numbers, and even items that's covered in policies, right? So now not only I know everything about you, I actually know where to go shop if I want to go, get my latest iPad without going to the iStore. Frightening to think that all these isolated incidents is actually a bigger picture where they just slowly build it all up together for the major attack to come. So things to consider, or that crossed my mind when I stumbled across this example, right, was just the long-term impact of security incidents. Now, naively, earlier in my life, I also thought, well, okay, the attack happened now, we responded to it, the server is up and running, the data is good, didn't appear that we lost everything, so it's fine, we can move on in life. But thinking about this now is not just getting your system up and running, is what are they going to do with the data they got? Can they actually consume the data they've got, right? So let's say, for some reason we lose a database or drop a backup or something. Do you at least have encryption on that thing that they can't reuse the stuff, right? Then the sophistication of the cybercrime syndicates. Like I said earlier, this is really, there's a plan behind where the guys are going with this, right? Like we are in the business of making good money in an honest way, while they're making equally good money in a very lucrative market, right? It's not going to go away. The capabilities and orchestration when enriching data sets. So also find very interesting, right? So when we talk about the big data and all the tools around it and the minings we do on the stuff for our business, it's great. And we spend a lot of time learning about these things and achieving really good results. Well, they do exactly the same thing, right? Just for nefarious purposes. The vulnerability of people to unwittingly participate. It's a shame in this example, the poor person that was actually responsible for the big breach to give them the entry into all the data was a call center agent that honestly was sitting and doing their job. I did the validation. I asked you your verification questions, and all the answers came back, and everything's right. And without even knowing, just participating and giving everything away, right? Then also, this kind of tells me the requirement to continuously focus and adapt our protocols. What is considered safe and secure today or a good practice today may not be so tomorrow, right? Technology changes, the approach people take to these things changes. And again, because attacking the human element rather than the technical side of it is so much easier, it is not just protocols and processes within our networks and our data centers and our development we need to think of. It's also when we deal with that nice new LinkedIn contact that comes in, do we actually really validate who that is and understand there's a real purpose to connect with that person? Or is it just like, yeah, another contact would be good. Great. So now you're sending out more information they can start building up and using against some of your contacts. And then, obviously, the importance of securing your data and your environments. So, after looking at all the bad things that can happen and why we're such a big target of these things, what is it that we can actually do to put ourselves in a better position? And I'm going to steal the first 2 minutes of Adam Beckman's presentation he did yesterday, which is really just a beautiful analogy for how we should be approaching this, right? So he actually spoke about fixing problems, performance problems in just related to hardware in the environment. And he compared it to Swiss cheese, right? And it actually just struck me, it's like, well, this is actually a really nice model for this as well. If you just take it the one slice at a time, it's going to be full of holes, right? It's easy to get in, and we do have problems. If you add another slice or just a bigger block or whatever, there's still holes, but you start closing the gaps. And eventually, if you have enough little pieces you put together or enough areas that you address, even with the holes that exist in your Swiss cheese, you actually block it off, right? So why that's important for me is when we do this, we shouldn't be aiming to do the be-all and end-all in terms of, we get a big consulting company in and we go through this massive process, spend millions of dollars to get to the end state in 18 months' time. That is defeating the purpose. Whatever you do, try iteratively just improving and improve in all areas at the same time, right? And I'm going to talk about the areas in a minute. But you want to protect, you want to be able to recover, you want to prevent, right? There's no point just putting great firewalls or perimeter security in place if you can't recover. Again, there's no point in just being able to recover if you're going to allow everyone to get into your data in the first place as well. But doing incremental improvements or validations throughout the process could actually get you some good results. So obviously the first thing we want to do is prevention, right? Prevention is always better than cure. Some of the stuff I wanted to highlight here was just application security, development practices, just being cognizant of vulnerabilities in our own source code, in the libraries that we use, and the exploits that's out there. I mean, constantly keep an eye on this. I remember from the days when I still developed software, far out of my mind, right? We had a job to do, we needed to get stuff out, the deadline was there, we tried to write good code and you get it out there. The responsibility of our developers are really very different these days. They need to understand all the potential exploits and vulnerabilities and the libraries and the dependencies between them and actually manage that properly, right? The other thing I see quite often, which horrifies me, is we'll chat to the developers and there's a known vulnerability in one of the frameworks or the packages they use. And we're like, well, did you patch this? Like, no, we can't patch that because there's a dependency on X, Y, and Z and the other, and this will break everything, and we need to get into production. So what ends up happening is they just actually ignore that. Now, in my opinion, albeit good that it was out, and I'm pretty sure that all the product managers was really happy that the fix or the feature was released into production, but the call relating to the validness of delaying a release to actually do the right thing from a security perspective should not have been sitting with the developer, right? It should probably not even be sitting with the product manager. That's where your DevSecOps processes come in place, and we need to mature in our development cycles to ensure we've got those checks and balances in place. Okay, obviously the next thing we want to do after we try to prevent attacks as best as we can is we need to protect. We need to protect our data, we need to protect our reputation, we want to protect from financial loss, the whole trip, right? So then there you want to look at stuff like your network security. I think that's probably the most well-known one that if we ask anyone at this conference, where would you hit the hardest on security? You'll probably get network security, right? But it's also important to understand that that cannot be the only layer you've got. Network is really just a portion to it. You do need operational security, end-user security, and at a minimum, if you can't prevent or protect in the best way or most rounded way as you can, at least encrypt whatever you can, right? It's still okay if people take something if they can't do anything with it. Not nice, but you can actually work with that, right? Then detection, threat intelligence, network traffic analysis, and some deception technologies are really good tools to understand what is going on in our environments. So again, anyone on their own will probably not be enough to solve your problem. But once you have a good prevention strategy, you're protecting your stuff, and you've got tools for detecting, you'll be able to proactively engage and manage the situation a lot better. And then obviously recoverability just rounds out the process, right? Disaster recovery planning is really one of the most important things that we can do for our organizations, and not just at an organizational level, right? Each practice within the business actually requires a similar plan, right? So it's good to know that we can restore our production systems, and we've got our plan to do that. And we know for our customer base, cool, you're going to have downtime for 8 hours, 12 hours, whatever it is. It's great. Your customers are up. Now something else goes wrong. Is your development environment up? Do you have your QA environments and your release environments? Is that ready to go? Can your business people function with what they need to do from a day to day? And all those have different plans that need to be executed and driven by different individuals in your business. A technical plan to recover your customer data is very different to what a developer has to go through to get their environment up to be able to assist again, right? So importantly, I mean, we need to understand and acknowledge these things we need to constantly be doing and move through the cycle as we go. Continual improvement, we're never going to be good enough, right? Stay updated on major breaches. Like I alluded to earlier, learn the lessons from other people. If it's happened once, there's a very good likelihood that that combined with something else in the past or something pushing towards that direction could happen to you as well. Protect where you can from lessons learned from other people. And then regular and focused validation of your processes, right? Be sure you've got, as part of your recovery plan, a tested method, an environment where you can actually test that this is working and not just have something for the sake of having it and not knowing that you can actually execute on your plan. Okay, so the most important things we want to do, and here I'm moving more away from, okay, this is the threat that we have, to why is it that we want to be protecting our stuff, right? And we want to ensure confidentiality of our data and the integrity of our data to ensure that our system can continually keep working, right? And we also want to ensure that our systems and the data is available when we need it. I'm not 100% sure, but I almost do want to think the opening session included some of this as well, where we need our data to be available and the integrity of the data must be perfect whenever we engage with it. And there's a lot of things that Progress themselves are doing to aid us with this, but it is not a problem that we can leave up to only Progress and the Open Edge platform to solve for us, right? The tooling does a really good job at what it does, but it also puts a lot of power into our hands as developers to really go and screw all of that up, right? So it does remain the responsibility of everyone to ensure whenever we work with, we think of our little triad here to, ensure that our data will be good, it's available when we need it, and it's confidential. So this I'm actually going to skip through just to have all of them on there. Because I think this is something we very often get wrong in our systems, right? So we're generally very good to identify someone that enters our system, right? We've got our usernames. There's some biometric stuff these days, which is really good. But it's important to understand that, if you don't do it right, it's possible for an individual to be identified without being authenticated, right? Because all you're doing in identifying is saying, if I can pick on you, Simon, is saying, I'm Simon. It's like, cool, how's it, Simon? But do I really know that it is Simon, right? So that's where your authentication comes in, where you now say, all right, so now I'm talking to an entity. Can I actually undisputably prove that it is actually Simon I'm dealing with? And obviously there's different levels of doing that. Where mostly out there, unfortunately, we're still talking about passwords that we know a lot of people don't have password managers, and it's really simple passwords, which is bad. At least we get into PIN codes with biometrics and one-time PINs and stuff that's coming in, which does a little bit of a better job, because at least now I'm verifying it's something that either you are or you own, which makes it a lot better than just something you know, right? So then once we know we identified you and we authenticated you, it's also good to keep a constant focus on the authorization. So what is it that we allow you to do with our data in our environments, in our systems? And it's important to keep the authorization levels at like a zero trust basis, right? Rather have someone not being able to do something and ask you to give them the permission than doing it the other way around. If your data is leaked, your data is leaked, right? So be very cognizant about that. And then also tie all of this up with accountability. Be sure that you can audit everything that someone does, right? You shouldn't end up with a situation where someone can transact with your system where there's no direct accountability that can be tied back to them. So if we implement this process, for understanding who we give access to our systems, I think we actually go a long way towards isolating things that can go wrong, right? Because the example I use now is a simple username and password logged in by a person, but the same actually holds with different services calling each other, right? Be sure that the correct stuff is still in place. You want to identify the source that the call is coming from. You want to authenticate it with something proper that someone can't imitate or they can be spoofed or something. And apply literally the same 4 rules on anything that can interact with your system or your data. So what are some security best practices? So again, update and enforce security policies. And maybe another question for the audience. How many of you have got solid security policies in your companies that you work with? Okay, that's good. That's also a good amount of number.
Depends which customer you're dealing with.
Okay, no, fair enough. Okay, so and don't become complacent about security. If there's one thing I can leave you guys with, right, is just have this top of mind whenever you engage. At least to ask the why are we doing this, or why are we not doing this? Did we think about this? That'll really get you in a good space. Understand the risks, the legal and regulatory concerns. There's some really good software development standards and a framework that's done by the National Institute of Technology, NIST. If you guys are not aware of that, I recommend go have a look at this. It's a very nice long list of stuff, well worth getting into your development practices. Treat your security as a priority. Implement robust plans. Do your security updates. Ensure you back up your data. Require the use of strong passwords and preferably even multi-factor authentication. I know it's annoying for everyone, but if it's something that's available, please guys, use it. Train your employees and ensure you do your patches right. So then include security measures in your SDLC. There's a lot of automated processes that can now be put into your build pipelines that can do some levels of code reviews, that can do vulnerability scans, even just check your standards and stuff. I'm not 100% sure, but I think Gilles Carré from Riverside Software does quite a lot of stuff in this space. Pop around and have a chat to him. I think he's got some really good info to help with that. Then also do some threat modeling, right? Understand what your software architecture is, analyze it, see where you've got gaps, where you can improve. Because again, and many years at these conferences, I've been one of the advocates for that same thing, right? Is we continually want to optimize for performance and reusability and scalability and all those things. But it's also important to understand that we need to consider our architectures for security as well. And at some point, there'll probably be a trade-off between the different enhancements what you want to do. And the choice you make, no one can stand here and tell you which is the right one or wrong one for your business. But just be sure that it's a reasoned decision you make, whether it is the performance or the security that actually wins the design. And then always design your software with security in mind. Okay, so what are some tools and technologies we should be looking at? And I think for the sake of time, I'm going to run through these quite quickly. Obviously, we want to be encrypting our data as much as we can. And after chatting to some people over the last couple of months, I actually realized that everyone likes to talk about encryption, and very few people actually understand encryption and the different methods that are out there. So I just thought I'll just put on a slide as a nice summary for everyone to have a look at and just refresh, right? So running through quickly, symmetric encryption or your private key encryption. It's quite a fast method of encryption. The problem you have with symmetric encryption is it requires you to share your key. At the moment, or the point in time where you have to share your private key anywhere else, there's a possibility that this could be intercepted in your transmission medium. Doesn't make it insecure, it's just something to keep in mind, right? So then you've also got your asymmetric encryption or your public key encryption. And this is where the public key of the destination is used to encrypt and you decrypt with the destination private key, right? More secure because you're now separating the lock and key properly. It is a little bit slower than symmetric encryption. So the interesting thing around that as well is that the reverse can be used to do digital signatures. And don't be fooled to think that you're actually encrypting something. You're just guaranteeing the source, right? Also, hashing is a good thing to look at, one-way encoding. It should be impossible to recover the original. You should have a unique hash for every input that you have. And really the major thing that is used for is just for identifying file integrity. So then there's some good things that Progress introduced in OpenEdge. And John, I'm really sorry if I get any of this wrong. I did a very quick scan, so please help me if I'm wrong. But you've got your transparent data encryption that protects your data on disk. I think it's something that really should be looked at to be sure we're in the right place. You've got a database master key where each encrypted database has a unique DMK. It's managed by your administrator, stored separate from the database. You can define database objects to be encrypted on specific tables and fields if I'm not mistaken on that. And you can specify the encryption cipher that you want. So the one thing that is quite nice is that your encryption and decryption process is transparent to any of the connected clients. And we've implemented it in production quite a while ago. And I'm going to lie to you if we actually saw a performance hit on this. I'm sure there would be something, but I think it's damn near to negligent, right? Really good thing to have. Then you've got the hardware security model support. So this provides a secure environment for cryptographic operations that facilitates the protection of sensitive data. Core functionality there is it's tamper-resistant hardware, ensuring the integrity of your keys. Authorized access, so you make keys available only to your authorized users, and it's obviously enhanced security, right? OpenSSL and TLS support. And was this all from 12.8, John? Or was this in oh. I think I took the documentation for literally from 12.8, so, but yeah. If you're not using this at the moment, definitely move to TLS 1.3. I know there's a lot of configurations out there that's still on 1.2. And obviously you want to be on the latest SSLs as well. So TLS 1.3 improves security protocols and cryptographic algorithms. And it promotes robust encryption for your OpenEdge applications. And it's a provider-based approach, right? So OpenSSL introduced the concept of providers. You can switch out for your encryption. Currently, OpenEdge uses the default and legacy algorithms, and your legacy provider won't be supported in future releases. So that's something that's important for you guys to consider if you use this. If you do have the legacy provider, have a look at the others and change that over while you still can. Code signing, this is something that I'm actually very excited about that's finally in place. Is very often we think we deployed our code through a very robust and secure process in our environment. We put it on our production environments, and that's pretty secure in our minds, so everything must be good. With code signing, we now have a way to guarantee that no one tampered with your code or injected anything in somewhere in your probe path in your code that could alter the behavior of your applications. So the users can actually trust the application comes and the code comes from a trusted source, and it reduces the risk of malicious or tampered code. Dynamic data masking is the concealing of sensitive data at runtime to ensure compliance with the likes of GDPR or PAPIA in South Africa. Benefits of this is you can control the amount of data that's exposed to different users and roles. You can hide sensitive data from view while the underlying data remains unchanged. And you minimize the risk related to unauthorized access and data breaches. There's no code changes required to implement this. You use authorization tags and role settings to control the data visibility. Okay, then there's some improvements in the application server as well. JWE tokens are now supported to enhance enterprise security. OAuth 2 token authentication through the OpenEdge Authentication Gateway. New and enhanced command line utilities to streamline Pezzo-E migrations and improve session lifecycle management. So I'm really just listing these. By no means am I an expert on these things, but the guys are around to chat to find out more about this, right? I think this all struck me as stuff that's worth exploring and diving into to understand that we take some good information when we get back to the offices, right? I do want to cycle back to incident response planning, right? This is really important enough for me to highlight it a couple of times because I think people say they do, but they don't really understand that they're not doing right. So it is crucial to plan or have a written set of instructions to guide what has to happen in a security incident. Because standing right here now and talking about it and saying, yeah, I've got a plan in place and we did something, it's really great because we're all in quite a comfortable area, we're not stressed about anything, everything is good, right? So if we talk through that list now and line number 7, there may be a small tweak, it's fine, we'll be able to recover from that. But once you get in a situation where there was a security incident and your production environment is down and everyone is running around to try and get your environments up, you don't want to sit in the position where people have to guess and research and do a quick little POC for something, because you're just going to make it worse. You would really want a tried and tested plan where you can literally go down line by line, tick the box, and by the time it's sure you know it's going to take you an hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, doesn't matter, to get through this exercise, you know it's going to work, right? It's very important to also plan for the roles and responsibilities of every individual that takes part in this plan. Be it right up from the CEO communicating to the customers, right down to the technical guys in the trenches that have to get everything up and running. There should be no gray area where it could be more than one person's primary responsibility. It is also very important to plan for a secondary person to be able to do the same task if something happens to your primary responsible person, right? They could get stuck with something, may not make it back to the office. Whatever it is, you need contingency with this. So there's a couple of different plans that you need to consider, right? So it's your incident response plan, which address the incidents without business interruption. You've got your business continuity plans, which keeps your operations running during the disruptions. And then obviously the disaster recovery plan that returns your business to the original state of the incident. So in summary, I think it's really important that we fully appreciate the scale and the implication of cybercrime. There's lots of talk out there, and I think some people do find that it's probably becoming a hype thing, and we're just threatening by saying these things, but it is really real, guys. Appreciate that, we need to actively do something about this as we go along. Cybercrime is a lucrative enterprise on both scale and the target landscape that's constantly growing, so this is not going away, right? It's going to become more pervasive as we go. Consciously act against cybercrime by using strong and secure passwords. Keep cyber threats top of mind in all your digital activities. And filter the information you share, right? Those nice photos on Facebook or the nice chat with the friend downstairs when you're having a smoke. Only give the information that you need to. Don't offer up stuff just for the sake of it, right? Cybersecurity strategy should include the following elements. So we should be looking at preventing, protecting, recovering, and then detection, right? When considering security, include safeguards in all issues or designs you deal with. And cyber incidents is not a matter of if anymore, but really a matter of when, right? It's going to hit your doorstep at some point. So if anything I can leave you with, this is the last bit of the slide, rather be over-prepared and not have the incident than being under-prepared and battling through it as you go. Cool. That is it, guys. Anyone have any comments or questions?
Yeah. How do you get your CEO and board to accept that running through disaster recovery, for example, is actually something that they should do? They should shut down the business for 1 or 2 days, do the plan, and make sure it works. Because unless you practice, you never know.
Yeah, so I fully agree with that statement. And I don't think I'm able to answer your question on that, right? Because it is almost impossible to get them to understand the gravity of that. But your point is very valid, right? The importance of running through that test and ensuring that we can guarantee what they mandate us to do is real, right? So I would say, the best you could do is actually give them the business case of this is what we're doing. You're mandating us to do this. You're limiting us in not being able to fully test it. So shift the responsibility from the technical team to the business team or the business owners, right? That if you don't allow us to do this, don't blame the technical side. The other surefire way to get that kind of attention, right, is just have a security incident. But that's not a good approach to get it through, right? But generally that puts a lot of focus on, okay, we need to start doing this right. But it is tough.
It's just one of the reasons I'm saying that is a previous company I worked at, we actually did the reports to do this, and we enacted a disaster recovery saying that the building had been contaminated with an unknown substance. And the whole backup procedure went in, we started moving the servers to our backup location, and then we realized that all our backup tapes were in the bank vault, and we couldn't get access to the bank from there. So 3 days without able to do the recovery.
Yeah, and I mean, that is hard lessons to learn, right? And it's real. Because again, we'd think, okay, so we do have something to recover, we've got the backup. But it's changed from trying just to attack your production service to, well, I know you've got a backup, right? So I want to get your production service and I want to get your backups. I probably already infected your backups way before I hit your production side, right? And if you don't go through the test and actually check that and unpack all the details as you go down, there's nasty surprises that come around, right? Or another example I can think of that is like, well, okay, so we've got everything. We even test our database backups, so the failover for that is great. But we don't have all the backups or tested for our servers or this random environment that's actually a dependency, right? Your most important server where your domain controller or something is sitting on is just kind of forgotten. And great to bring a database back up, but you still can't interact with the environment, right? So. Cool, guys, and thank you very much for your time. Hope you enjoyed the PUG event, and we'll see you guys again next year.